short weeks away, and Run Pure Sports is gearing up for the season with the best deal in DFS.
For a limited time only, we are offering new members a 15% discount for the life of their subscription, including SaberSim subs. Simply use the promo code NFL15 when subscribing to take advantage of this great deal before our prices go up.
And at RPS, we don't just give you access to one sport. When you subscribe to our premium service, we give you access to all of our content, including NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, and so much more.
And we're not going to charge extra for access to our preseason content either. Our memberships include all of our content, including the NFL preseason. The best DFS players in the industry give you access to their core plays and slate strategies for every sport and for every slate. Simplify your lineup building process by plugging in picks directly from the top players in the world. Watch our premium live streams to gain a huge edge on the competition. Our guys are live up to lock for the biggest slates, walking you through their last-minute decisions, analyzing breaking news and injury alerts for the major sports.
Again, for a limited time only, you can access our industry-leading DFS content for 15% off our already low price. SaberSim packages are included, so sign up today using the promo code NFL15 for 15% off your subscription for life and start building winning lineups today.
What is up, Jabronis? JJ back here with Keg and Coop, talking a little NASCAR this week, the Richmond 400. Now, before we go into detail about this race, we always like to recap last week, good, bad, or ugly. It was not a good week for me, personally. I got bailed out a bit with one or two lineups that were like hedge lineups that happened to sneak into money, so it wasn't a total disaster for me. But, yeah, I mean, I actually was pretty underweight on a lot of bad drivers. The problem is there was just a lot of accidents. And even like late in the race, the fact that it was last week, the week where Bowman were races out of nowhere snuck into like Bowman snuck into the top 10, or am I thinking 2 weeks ago? Was last week Bowman where he snuck into the top 10 late?
I think he was solid.
I have to check.
I think that he was racing relatively okay, but like all race he was outside the T20, and then it was like in stage 3, like just weird shit started to happen, and there was also an accident in the middle of cautions in the middle of that race. I think. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, in the middle of pitting. 9th. And I think that helped like a good 10 to 15 drivers. I know Keselowski was helped out a lot by that. I don't know if that resulted in his finish, but like there was that like 10 to 15 drivers. Like Austin Dillon was in there. There were a lot of drivers that were in there that were chalky, that benefited from the ill-timed caution. That's always the fun part, right? When they start, pitting during green and then an accident happens, and how everybody else kind of gets banged. But overall, I know, Jay, it wasn't a great week for you. It definitely wasn't a great week for me. Coop, did you have any salvaging last week?
I salvaged a couple bets that, made my day better than how bad it was. It wasn't very good at all. So, no, not a good week.
Yeah, and I mean, look, here's the thing: we're transparent here. I mean, obviously, we're going to have some strong takes. Some of us are going to, but I guess race by race and whatever. We'll give you our own perspectives. But like me personally, I'm going to have some strong takes on races because in this sport, you have to. There's just so many drivers that are overowned, so many drivers that are underowned, and I think you can really find good leverage spots to take chances. But with accidents and cautions, it does add variance to the mix. So yeah, we're not going to be right every week, but for me, the few times we're going to be right, I think we're going to.
On the spreadsheet, we've actually finished up a half unit in NASCAR, but like on the live show and in reality, by the end of Sunday, I felt like I had a train ran on me. It was not a good. I got crushed. So I'm hoping that we bounce back here big. I think Coop and I have a good feel for the race, so I'm excited to talk about it.
And what sucked was I had a lot of Harvick in DFS, but I also had a lot of Bell and Chastain. So, not good.
Yeah, I mean, Chastain continues to be to me anyway, continues to be a great fade every week. I mean, I was fading him when he was racing really well, but he was rarely in optimals. And again, to me, that's the big piece. Like obviously Chastain is pretty much a good play almost every week in cash. But the dude rarely finds himself in optimals. And I think now we're starting to see him get unluckier and unluckier on a weekly basis. Weird things are starting to happen. That one pit he had where that tire like magically rolled out of the pit and that caused him to move to the back. That was like super unlucky. I mean, like normally that tire would just stop and fall over in his box, but it didn't. It turned and moved into the track, and they caused him a lap for that. And I think was he speeding as well last week that moved him to the back. Yeah. He moved to the back a few different times, but again, these have been unlucky pieces. But this is a guy that's been super fortunate this season, in so many ways. Was it last week too, where he had the bad accident, where he had a pretty bad accident that he got out of without issue again? Ended up paying the price regardless at the end of the race anyway. But has there been a race he hasn't actually finished this year? Like I feel like everybody hasn't finished races this year. That dude is finishing every single race. Maybe it's a greater tribute to their team in terms of the way they're building his car or whatever, being able to sustain damages and make part changes as needed. But either way, I'm just going to continue to fade him until he beats me, because he hasn't beaten me once fading him in optimals. So, but anyway, Coop, let's talk this track and give us the goods.
3/4 mile flat track. It's the first track that's short that we've been back to. They raced here earlier this year, so you can pull data from that. I think the other one is Loudon. They raced that here a couple weeks ago, and then I'm not really using Phoenix much because it happens so early, much earlier in the year. So typically we don't see a lot of cautions at this track, and it becomes a strategy race. And the other key piece is its high tire wear race. And there's particular drivers in this series that are good at it, and there's others that are not good at it. So, in my opinion, this is the toughest slate of the year because of, one, the pricing, the fact that you probably, not definitely, but probably need 2, maybe 3 Dominators. And, there's a lot of place differential available, but it's hard to pass here. And will that place differential hold off? If you go back and look at this race historically, I know this is a different car, but it played out the same in the spring as what it had in the past. Is you start from the top 10, you lead laps. It's hard to lead laps if you don't start in the top 10 here. Track position is key. You can win and start outside of the top 10, but the majority of the Dominators come from drivers who start in the top 10. And then, we have the playoffs looming, and we have several drivers who are in need of a victory in order to obtain that playoff position. And that's the only way they'll get in. So with it being a strategy race, I expect, we see some of those players, attempt some strategy, depending upon, if it allows. So, like I said, there's so many different ways you can go with this race. You've got to kind of think of it from a showdown perspective and how you think the race is going to play out. And, this race could play out in multiple different ways. Attrition isn't high here, but the strategy piece can flip the field around very quickly.
Now, Coop, when we talk on this race, and maybe Jay, I'll point this over to you before we go into the Dominators and we go into the RPS playbook that you do every week, Coop. Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, 3 guys that consistently have issues finishing. Actually, I guess I could separate Busch and Larson because those 2 just have issues finishing races at all. But I can lump in Blaney and Chastain in the sense that these 4 individual drivers haven't really been in an optimal in quite some time. Do you think that this influences anybody betting them or anybody putting them in their DFS lineups? Because again, if you're entering tournaments, you're entering these drivers in. Granted, if you're just playing for the first time today out of nowhere, obviously do what you will. It hasn't impacted you. But if you've been playing this weekly like we have, these 4 drivers in particular have cost a lot of money to people, especially if you're trying to win tournaments. Again, if you're playing cash, some of these guys haven't hurt you that bad. But in terms of GPPs, these 4 drivers are always odds less than 10-1 or 10 or 12-1 or less, and they consistently aren't landing in optimals. Jay, what's your approach on those 4 drivers in particular for this race? Have you been stung too much by them, or do you think maybe now is still a decent time to see some value in them?
Yeah, we have been hurt multiple times this year from a betting perspective, Coop and I, on Kyle Busch, on Ross Chastain, and even maybe once or twice on Larson. Here's the thing. I just don't think any of those 4 cars will be good enough today to be a few of the Toyotas, Harvick, and maybe a couple of the Hendrick cars. So, listen, Blaney's going to play the strategy game, right, Coop? He wants to win big time. Can he find himself up there? Yeah, he could. And if he does, can he stay out in front with clean air? Maybe, but I don't think he has the pure speed to get it done. I think Ross Chastain, given how fast he's been all year, I'll say out of those 4 cars, he has the best chance to pay off today. I don't think I believe in Larson that much. But yeah, Chastain could, but I'm not betting either of the 4 of them, any of them. I'm on different guys that we'll talk about.
That's fair. And Coop, on your end, it looks like your boy Marty's at the top. I know you have a pretty love relationship with the guy. I'm sure you love seeing that he's this far up. I think the interesting thing with this track is, number one, it's very easy to go a lap down here. And if you go 2 laps down, it's going to be very difficult for you to find any type of traction. Now, I know you mentioned cautions aren't expected to be crazy here. But before we go into your dominators, like, what's your approach for lineup building today, Coop? Is it a bunch of dominators? Is it some place differential? I see Chris Bell, obviously coming from 21. He is going to be wildly popular, at least in my opinion, because you have a guy that's got good win equity. He's got good place differential. He's obviously good on these tracks. What's your take on a guy like Bell, and what's your approach to lineup building today?
Oh, man, this is what makes it so tough this week, because in the spring, we had 4 dominators here. All right. We also saw 3 cars start outside of the top 20 who ended up in the top 10, Austin Dillon, Kyle Larson, and Alex Bowman. And then we had those 4 dominators. The dominators, are going to get their points, and they're going to be hefty points. It's just a matter of how this dominator points, fall. I would say 2 to 3 is what you're shooting for, but I see a path for a 1 dominator race with Denny Hamlin. Denny's been really fast recently. He runs well here, and it wouldn't shock me if he goes out and leads 200 and some odd laps. On the other end, I think you got to give Kyle Larson some credence too, to a 1 dominator. We saw Blaney start on the pole and lead 123 laps at the beginning of the year. Who's to say Kyle Larson could not, do the same and have even more? But then at the same time, all right, how these dominator points fall is going to be so critical, because in stage 2 and 3 of this race in the spring, we saw cars go 2 pit stops and some cars go 1 pit stop. There are some drivers in this race that I mentioned earlier that need to win. Eric Jones, Brett Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, Bubba Wallace, Austin Dillon. They all start, like 7th to 12th. Cole Custer too. And at some point in this race, I would expect one of them, maybe 2 of them, maybe one in stage 1 or stage 2, the other in stage 3, to go opposite of the pit strategy that the leaders do. And what they're going to do is they're going to stay out, and they're going to run laps, and they're either going to run it until, the leaders catch back up to them, or they have to pit for gas. And they're going to potentially still a bunch of laps led from, a Larson and a Truex, a Hamlin, Chastain, Byron, Bowman, some of them drivers up front. And, that could really, put a crank into the Dominators. So let's say Denny goes out and, he's the one that gets the lead, and he, leads 185 laps, but the other laps are stolen from drivers who are trying to play strategy and race their way into a championship opportunity. So, there's different ways to look at this, and that's what makes it so difficult and challenging. But from a roster construction piece, like if you just go flat out 2 Dominators, obviously your first 2 choices are going to be Marty and Denny, or one of them plus Larson. And at that point, it makes it very, very difficult to play a Kyle Busch. It makes it difficult to play a Chase Elliott, and even a Chris Bell. Because 1, you're going to land on a lot of the same lineups, and 2, you're going to be going with 3 punt plays. Same way if you went, let's say, hey, I want to go with 3 Dominator attack, and I want it to be Larson, I want it to be Elliott, Truex, and I want it to be Hamlin. Like, I think at that point you're left with like 6K.
Yeah, 6K for the last 3 spots.
So, there's different ways to go, different options, and which one prevails is going to be, the unknown and the key. And, the whole thing is like that driver that does a strategy. Hey, he could be out leading for 30 laps, catch some of these drivers down who are good, or put them at the end of the lead lap. And, everybody's going to pit again, and he's back in first place. And, that's probably, is it going to happen? Who knows? But it very well could happen. And that's what makes this whole race intriguing.
Yeah, and we'll go into Dominators now. I'm just going to make one point. There's no competition caution here, right? So whoever pops out in front, whether it's Larson or Chastain, it's hard to imagine they will not get almost every stage 1.
And the thing is, it's really key to hit the right one that pops out first, because that's when they're going to get the most fastest laps. Because if we see a race like we did in spring, where we have a bunch of cars pitting off a cycle, these fastest laps are going to be spread out so much that it's going to hurt, from a Dominator perspective. But it's going to help those drivers who are, fighting for place differential and things of that nature. I think the 34 laps was the most it was for fastest laps in the spring. 9 drivers had 15 plus. And like, even to show you, like a Michael McDowell, who never sniffed the top 20, had 20 fastest laps.
One point though, on what you were talking about, Jay. They could go 70 green to the end of stage 1, or they can get a caution, right? But with this next gen car, especially on short tracks, clean air has been so big, and the pole at Richmond has a huge advantage to get out first. And if you can get out first, what we've seen this year, especially on these type of tracks, is you get out, it's really hard to chase you down, especially early until those tires really start to wear. So I think the pole is going to be the nuts for early, to lead early.
And I know we're delaying this, and I swear I promised the last thing before we go into your playbook, Coop. Why are we seeing this so much with drivers? Like we saw last week with Bubba Wallace. Now I had Bubba Wallace locked in, and he ended up in the optimal, so that's probably some of the reasons why I was able to salvage some money last week. But like Bubba Wallace had the lead early in the race and chose to pit with everybody else or some others, and then he struggled to get back. We see this with so many drivers all season long, where they have the lead, they can wait until the caution. Until the stage ends to pit. They're choosing to pit early during an accident or a caution instead of doing it at stage end. They lose the track position and never get it back. I'd argue it happened to Kyle Busch as well last week, because Kyle Busch pitted as well in that caution and then was in the back and was trying to do a little too much from the back and got snagged and was in the middle of that big accident. If you're in the front, why aren't you staying there, Coop?
I mean, a lot of it boils down to like Kyle Busch last week, who, felt he had a decent car, but like he wants to win. And he felt, he wasn't going to win unless he got in and made some changes. So he took that opportunity to make them changes, so that it would help him in the long run versus the short run. And, unfortunately, he got caught up in other people's crap. So, it's all a mind game with these guys. It's so much data involved when they're looking at their screens on who's got these laps and who's running the goods and who's running the bad. Like, there's a lot more data involved than what we actually think, watching the race.
Fair. Definitely a fair point. All right, so look, let's go into your dominance. Before we do, though, I mean, guys, we got 180 you watching and 48 likes. I mean, we obviously try to give you.
Woo!
We try to give you as much good, juicy content, and we go a little off script too, which I think is good, right? Because you get to talk on some tangents and some lineup building. Like, this isn't scripted. We're not rehearsing this in front of a mirror for 3 hours. So we're giving you our thoughts as we have them on this show, and of course, we're reading off Coop's playbook, which is a big feature set of Run Pure on the DFS side. You'll get this for every sport, obviously for members. But yes, please like the video. As always, if we get to 150, our friend Jason will give out his entire card for the betting. We haven't gotten to 150 yet, so maybe today is going to be the unicorn. We will see. There is 180 of you watching, so if you all just click the like button, we'll get to 150 instantly. I know that won't happen, but let's at least get us over 100, and then let's use the next 30, 35 minutes of the show to get us to 150. Come on, you guys are better than this. All right, Coop, let's start with the playbook. Let's talk on Dominators. This is the type of race where, of course, this matters more than arguably any other track, or at least most other tracks. With it being shorter, with it being a potential for going laps down, and we talk about place differential, just doesn't hold as much merit here with how risky it is if you go laps down, you go multiple laps down. But talk on some Dominators here, Coop.
So obviously, you got to start with Kyle Larson up front. And if you're not playing Kyle Larson, you are either thinking that one who gets beat off the front from Chastain or Hamlin, or, he leads a couple and then one of the two, catch up and pass him. But as Jay said, the clean air is, very good here, and it's very difficult to pass at the front. So Larson's obviously going to be popular. He's not going to be as popular as Denny and Marty. But again, it's how you play these guys, I think. And, do you want to have a 1 Dominator build, a 2 Dominator build, 3 Dominator build? And, trying to get different, and there's ways to get different. We'll talk about that later on as we go. But, you've got to kind of, flow out your, showdown piece on how you think the track or the race is going to flow. One thing that wasn't brought up, that first stage, we could see a lap, caution around lap 40, 50, 60, and then that's going to throw a wrinkle into everything. The closer we get to the end of the stage, and more likely that drivers might want to try to stay out and get some stage points. And then there's fewer laps for the fresher tires to actually take advantage of them. But then again, if only 3 stay out, they're going to be eaten up alive by them fresh tires. So, there's all kinds of different ways to go here. I think Byron and Bowman, especially Bowman, are going to be really low owned. And where they can, steal some laps is in the second and third stage. I think they're going to stay up there. And again, I think Larson is going to stay up there too. The one that I'm going to pass on is Chastain. I can't play all of these drivers. And I just feel that Larson is better, than him at this track. I'm not sure if either of them have a great long run car. I would definitely say Marty has, the opportunity to pass him, as long as Denny too. But if I had to pick one, it would be Denny. Denny's just been so strong here recently. His car has been so fast. And I like Denny on restarts. His car seems to get out faster than what Truex does. I think Truex is one of them drivers that, he's not going to gain positions really on the restart. He's going to hold his position or lose a couple here and there, and then wait for the tire wear to kick in is where he's going to pick up. So, I just think you got to be different. If you're going to play Larson, go with Byron. If you're going to play Marty and Denny together, man, you got to get really different in other spots, or you're going to be so duplicated. But then again, we've got to remember, if you play Larson, there's a good chance that possibly he leads that first 150 laps. They go to that first pit stop in the second stage, and Denny pits, Marty pits, Larson pits. Well, then you have, like, let's say a Keselowski who stays out, and he steals those laps from Marty and Denny, of possibly being led. So there's all kinds of different ways. You just got to be different. Don't be afraid to be different today. There's not going to be a lot of attrition, or there shouldn't be a lot of attrition in this race, but it can be flipped up upside down, due to these pit strategies, and especially if a caution falls, during one of them.
A lot of good points there, Coop. And I'll tell you this, in terms of being different, we spoke on this earlier. Like, you want to be different, you can easily play those 4 drivers that are never in optimals. I know Larson obviously is going to be popular today, and he's one of the drivers that's never in optimals. Just a guy that seemingly can't keep his car upright, right? So he's going to see a lot of ownership, and you have to make that distinction. If, can you deal with the fact that he's going to lead practically every lap for the first 70 or so? And then, but to be clear, if he does only that this race, he's not going to be in the optimal. Like, he's just not going to be, because he's going to drop. He's going to slowly drop to the back. He's going to lose points for that. So yeah, if you get a spot where Larson goes end to end, wire to wire, of course, it's going to be in the optimal. But he has not kept the car upright all season long. Truex, this is a good spot for him. I think he's going to be pretty popular overall. He's going to have to be, because he's got the best win equity. He's coming from 6. He's likely going to lead laps at some point. He's always good on this track. But all these guys are priced nice, right? Like, they're all priced pretty heavy, which makes it difficult to kind of figure out what way you want to go. And if you play 3 studs, I mean, you're basically going to be pairing them with guys like Cole Custer for the rest of your lineup. So do you want to do that? Jay, on your end, as far as win equity goes, who are some folks you like?
Yeah, I mean, so the comp for this track is Loudon, which they were at recently. You can use the spring race at Richmond. Kevin Harvick was the fastest car on the track, right? So at 16-1, he was 20-1. At 16-1, there is value there. Marty and Denny were phenomenal. Marty had the best car at Loudon by a mile, and he is the best driver on the track for this track. An average finish at 2.3. He has won like half of the last 6 races. I mean, the bottom line is, the 4 best guys that save tires on tracks like these is Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and Kevin Harvick. And those 4 guys probably have, you have to throw Kyle Busch out only because he can't get out of his own way right now. But Harvick, Marty, and Denny, I think, have an advantage above the rest. But aside from that, I think that Chase Elliott should be very good today. I think Will Byron has a chance to be good today. I do think that there are some cars that have a chance to beat those 3 guys. I think Chris Bell can be very good today. But for me, it's Harvick, and obviously for Coop too. Denny, Truex, and Harvick should be the class, but right behind them, I think Elliott and Byron and a couple other cars.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a pretty spread out field. And I'll say this, like, this race is going to feel pretty chalky. I think you're going to see some very high ownership on especially a few key guys at the top, and some place differential seems like it's going to be relatively chalky as well. But needless to say, I will say, like, we haven't had a lot of like chalk endings to these. Like, I feel like if you've been playing just chalk every week, like there's been a decent amount of time where early in the year, if you were playing chalk place differential, you were just cashing every week. But that has not been the case anymore. The chalk has been failing in various ways over the last, I'd say, month and a half. So to Coop's point, like, pick a few guys you want to play and then start fading some of the higher owned guys as well, because you're going to have to be different in some instances. And there's a lot of different ways you could be different this week. But Coop, let's move on to the next piece of your playbook, place differential, right? Obviously a super popular piece every week in terms of where folks try to find value, where folks try to find people that can move up and still save you money. So who are some guys you're targeted here?
So this is an interesting section because you have a whole slew of names to choose from: Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Chris Bell, Tyler Reddick, Daniel Suarez, Austin Cindric. And they're all starting here, not necessarily because they have bad cars. It's just how they ended up qualifying in practice. I mean, one thing we didn't touch on was practice, and practice was very sensitive to when you were on the track, because we saw the track change multiple times, and it changed very quickly. And the guys who were starting up front were on the track at the right time, where the guys who were starting in the back, weren't. So the other piece that makes it difficult with these drivers is their price. And then on top of that, the fact that you want 2 dominators, 3 dominators. It's virtually impossible to play any of the guys that are probably 8.8 and above in this section with 3 dominators, unless you're going to put Byron or Bowman in your lineup as a dominator. But you're not going to end up playing a Kyle Busch, Martin Truex, and Denny Hamlin. It's just too difficult. And then, playing 2 of these dominators together is another piece that makes it difficult, especially if you want to go with, 2 place differential drivers. So, how do you get different with these guys? I think from a roster construction standpoint, Kyle Busch is going to be low owned. All right. And, you look at people like Jay who are down on him because of what's happening to him recently. I think this is a great race for Kyle Busch, because, the chance that he trips over his own feet at Richmond are less likely, because of the fact, that there's little attrition, and, it comes down to long runs and being able to manage your tires, and that's what he does well with. So, I like Kyle Busch. I like, Chase Elliott, and I think Chase Elliott's another reason that's going to keep Kyle Busch's ownership down. And you have Chris Bell, who's going to keep both of their ownerships down, because he's a little bit cheaper. It's much easier to play 2 dominators and Chris Bell than it is 2 dominators and the other 2 guys. So, it's tough. And I think you got to pick and choose between these guys. Like Reddick, I don't know if Reddick can get up and finish 12th where he needs to pay off his price tag. Suarez has to get to 12th too. Could he get there? Yeah. But could I see him finishing 16th and 17th? Most definitely. And then you have Austin Cindric. He's the one that I'm likely going to fade when it comes to GPPs, because I could see him, losing a lap early and, capping his upside. He has to get to 18th to be able to pay off. And if he loses that lap, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to pay off that tag. I get it in cash, but GPP, completely different. So if you want to get different with some of these guys, I think the way to go is play them with a Kyle Larson or a Denny Hamlin as a 1 dominator. And you can get a couple into your lineups, and it's going to be different. So, it's going to be hard if we have 3 or 4 dominators for any of these drivers to outscore those dominators. So, I'm not going to be high on all of them, but I think that their ownership is going to be spread out so evenly that they're not going to be very high owned to begin with.
I am completely with you on Cindric. At his price and at his projected ownership, he's a complete fade for me. I'm not saying he can't race well. He very well could. He very well could T10. He very well could get you where you need to be. But from a price perspective, on a slate where you're going to need money because you're going to want dominators in here, it's not as simple as like, oh, well, I want to fit in Cindric because if he gets in 12th, he's going to win me money. That's not the case. Like, it doesn't. There's going to be so many dominator points at this track that place differential matters, sure. But if you're going to play 55% owned Austin Cindric in GPPs, I just think you're out of your mind. Like, I'd rather let him finish somewhere outside the top 15 or maybe go a lap down, and I'm jumping everybody else. Like, his upside in this race for me from where he's starting from is like limited. Yeah, look, if his price was like $9K and less people were playing him because he was that price, I'd probably be higher on him. But at 7,500, everybody's going to play him. And I'll be honest, like, I mean, Almirola at least is a better play. Like, granted, they're both chalk, but like at least Almirola to me has more upside and he's cheaper. So like, you're comparing the two together, it just makes sense to go Almirola. But again, the tournaments obviously got to be different. I don't think you should have both of them at all together. I don't think if you're gonna play them two together, you should not be playing the chalky guys at the top. Because again, remember, when you construct your lineups, you got to think not only is this going to win me a tournament, or you have to think, am I actually going to be different? Because if you're making the same lineups as everybody else, that magical time that you do win, you ain't going to be winning what you expect to win. So you got to find spots to be different. And if you're going to play the chalk place differential guys at the bottom, do not pair them with guys like Kyle Larson and Ross Chastain and Marty Truex, because it's just it's winless. I mean, look, I could tell you, yeah, do that, but it's not. We wouldn't be authentic, right? You can't win tournaments consistently in this sport if you're building lineups in that method. Coop, do you agree?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, it's all about, like, don't worry about the ownership. Like, worry about how you want to get different from the ownership and who you see as being, able to give that upside. Like there's a great pivot off of Daniel Suarez, in my opinion, is Chase Briscoe. We haven't gotten to him yet, but he's $200 more expensive. He starts in 15th, so he doesn't have that upside that on paper Cindric does that he'll never get to. All right. But in reality, Chase Briscoe has a much, much better chance of staying on the lead lap. Chase Briscoe has a much, much better chance of finishing 11th and 12th and picking up, some positive points. And Chase Briscoe is going to be very low owned.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that Suarez, I think, got brought up to me. Suarez is also an auto fade at his price. To me, at that price, even if he moves up a few spots and finishes in 10th or 11th or 12th, I don't see how at that price he's going to win you an optimal. Like, I don't see how he's going to win you a tournament, because you're going to have, unless he leads laps. Like, if he gets to the front at some point and leads you 50, 60 laps, sure, then great. It'll work out. But if he doesn't lead you any laps, he's going to need a lot more than a few spots of place differential to win you money at that price. If Suarez is 6,800, to me, much more of an auto play. 82, especially with how your lineup have to construct this week, I just don't see how he's in the optimal without leading laps or without T5ing. So if you think he can T5, go ahead and fire him in your lineups. But at his projected ownership, yeah, I'm good.
Hey, just real quick, I saw this stat comment earlier. I think it was 17 of the top 20 cars from the starting position in spring were in the top 20. So if you started in that top 20, you had a very good shot at staying in the top 20. And, we'll get to it later with the, value drivers. Like, people are going to look at the paper and be like, oh, wow, Austin Cindric starting 33rd or 34th and Michael McDowell 33rd, 34th. Like, they can get there. Like, you just can't. It's hard to pass.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, like I said, to me in this range, Almirola would be the lone guy I would even think about playing. But his ownership is going to be ridiculous, and I hate playing drivers with this type of ownership. So, but anyway, before we move on to the next section, Keg, on your end, any guys you like from the back? Obviously, Kyle Busch is in the question mark, but any guys you like in the back to maneuver their way towards the front?
Yeah, the one guy that I want to talk about with you guys, because it's head scratching. The best car on the track the last 3 months has been Chase Elliott, undoubtedly. Okay. In saying that, he was the third fastest car on the track at Richmond earlier in the year, third fastest car at Loudon about a month ago, and he's 16-1 only because he's starting from 23rd, or he would be what, Coop, 7.5-1 if he was starting in the top 10.
Yeah, but I mean, I get that. I agree with that. But like, I think if you go back and look at
laps,
if you go back and look at the history of this race, like, there might have been one or two drivers that started outside the top 20 that won this race. Not very many. Not very many.
That price is sick. That's a crazy number to me. But yeah, no, I mean, the drivers that I'd be looking at, Jay, like from 15-1 on back, if you can get Kevin Harvick still at 15, 16-1, him, I don't mind Elliott. I don't mind. I think Chris Bell has a chance to be competitive in this race. If it all broke right for Alex Bowman at 20-1, he maybe, but I really do think that Denny Hamlin, Marty, Harvick are just going to really put this field to bed. So I would be focusing on them really, but Elliott's intriguing and Bell is intriguing.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, Coop, let's move on here. I know that we've ran the show a bit long, but middle tier drivers, say this every week. This is where you actually win tournaments in this section, because you almost always need one guy that's priced in the middle, anywhere between what I'll call maybe on the DKN, maybe like 7,100, 7,200, all the way up to like 94-ish. I guess you could slot anybody in that range. But typically you will need 1 to 2 drivers in this range on a weekly basis to stick in an optimal. Who do you like here, Coop?
So, based upon what I just said about, starting in the top 20, finishing in the top 20, I like this section much more than the place differential drivers. We have some good drivers in this section, and it's going to be very interesting with how Joey Logano and Kevin Harvick ownership comes out with, the Bells, the Reddicks, the Suarezes, the Elliots, and the Kyle Busch, because there are these two in there. They could very easily finish top 5. They could win. Kevin Harvick's very strong here. Joey Logano is very good on short, flat tracks. I think he has 4 top 5s in his last 5 Richmond races. He's done good on flat tracks so far this year. And, playing the 2 of these drivers over the place differential drivers, could be the key. But at the end, is it going to be the right decision? Are Harvick and Logano are going to end up being, more popular than, let's say, a Bell or a Reddick, Elliott, drivers like that. And even with their price, it still makes it hard to play 2 Dominators and 2 of them. So again, this just adds more variety, more different ways to go within this slate. So definitely like the 2 of them. I've already tapped on Chase Briscoe. Chris Buescher is also in here. He starts 18th. Buescher's probably going to finish anywhere from 13th to 18th. He's very consistent, very solid on flat tracks. I think he's going to get more ownership than what people think. Austin Dillon, another good driver here. Starts 12th. Doesn't have a lot of upside, but the price and his ownership should be very low. Could I see Austin Dillon finishing 8th, 9th, 10th? Yeah, definitely. But again, he has a great shot to stay on that lead lap, and in the spring, 16 drivers stayed on that lead lap. And if he stays on that lead lap, it helps limit his downside, So I like all 5 of those drivers.
Cool. Very good. Very good. And Jay, on your end, I guess in relation to guys in the middle of the pack, anybody here you're looking for with win equity?
No, not really. Not at all.
Short and sweet. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. So let's move on to the next section. And before we do, what are we at? 114 likes, 250 of you watching. Be better. We need 35 likes. Jay will give you out his whole bets card for today. Bets he fired on for this race. And hey, look, we get to 150. I'll tell you 3 guys that I'll personally be overweight on as well in the DFS streets. So if you're into that information, or if you're not into it, don't like the video. But that's on you, not on us. We're just trying to help.
You know what amazes me is like how you quickly transition from a baseball mind to a NASCAR mind. You do the baseball show, and then boom, you're right here on the NASCAR show.
Coop, I appreciate it. I mean, we don't usually tolerate the knob slobbing. Usually I'm the one knob slobbing you guys. So I appreciate it when it comes my way. But no, yeah, I love this sport. Obviously it's a sport I wasn't even watching before COVID. I attribute you guys specifically for getting me more involved in it.
And hey, did you see your boy John Huff? Have you become a John Huff fan?
No, sad to say I haven't yet. You're talking golf, right?
Yeah. He had the white hat on, man. A couple weeks
playing
ago.
White. I need to be
playing white.
It seems like I'll need to be then. All right. He knows. That guy definitely must fuck.
He was in contention to win.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the last section from you, Coop. We could talk on some fades, but hopefully you folks will continue to like the video here and get us past 150, which will be a show first, by the way. I know. Crazy. I'm holding my breath. Let's move to the last section here, Valuetown. There's going to be a lot of popular guys in this section. We've talked on Amarola a bit this show. So, Coop, I'd love for you to give your exact take on him and with his ownership and whatnot and where you'll be. And then talk on some other guys because, here you're definitely going to need 1 to 2 guys in this section as well, in my opinion, to win today.
So I think the biggest thing when you get down here is you've got to be able to separate what looks good on paper and what's going to actually happen in reality. Because we have drivers who look good on paper. And if this is a 1.5 mile track and you could get up to the front easily and we saw more attrition, I would much more be inclined to play them. And, Amarola has got to be my favorite from here. I mean, obviously the guy's good on flat tracks and he did lay down some very good long run speed. And if you look at him historically, long run speed is like right up his alley. That's what he does well with. The whole key for all these drivers who are starting, let's say, from 20th on back, is these first 70 laps are crucial for them to stay on the lead lap. Because once they fall down a lap, it's going to cap their upside. And not only that, it's going to make it more difficult for them, to get to where they need to go to make value. So, I think Amarola is good enough to stay on the lead lap. Would I be surprised if he falls down? No, not one bit. Harrison Burton, I think, is going to be popular too, but not nearly as popular as Amarola. And I think he has a good enough car to where he can be one of the better cars on the lead lap. And, that might not seem like great, but like I said, 16 drivers last time is what finished on the lead lap. So I still do think, there's some upside for him to finish top 20. The 2 that I'm really not on are McDowell and Haley. I can see them staying 25th and worse on back. I think 2 interesting GPP plays that'll be low owned is Noah Gragson and Ty Dillon. If they can stay on the lead lap, they're not going to necessarily pick up a lot of place differential points, but they're going to be getting positive points at a low ownership. And they're going to be a way to get different from all the chalkier plays that we talked about earlier. So Noah and Ty are very, very interesting, low-owned GPP plays for me.
Riddle me this real quick, Coop, on Boucher. What do you think he's going to come in at ownership-wise? I find him a decent happy medium today where a guy that comes with some upside, he's starting relatively high enough where you're not as fearful of him losing laps if he keeps the car upright, but it doesn't look like he's expected to see a lot of ownership, maybe because his price is in those 6s instead of the 5s like some of the other guys you recently mentioned. What's your thoughts on him, though, today as a driver?
That could be the thing that keeps him lower owned, not say lower owned, but moderately owned, is his price. I would be surprised if he's not like 18 to 20% owned. All right.
Really? Okay.
Where I think you can get, like, I think people might be thinking he's going to come in at like 10, 11, 12%. I don't think that's going to happen. People know that Chris Buescher's solid on these tracks. But that's what intrigues me more about Noah Gragson and Ty Dillon.
Yeah, fair enough in a lot of ways. Folks, we are 19 likes away from the magical 150. 240 of you still watching. So guys, we need 19 likes. But as we're doing that, I just want to be clear. We've been running through Coop's playbook, which he does a tremendous job with every week. Between core plays and playbook, it's kind of what separates us from the pack, right? In terms of what we do differently, what we don't do differently. But needless to say, you get with premium membership for Run Pure Sports, you get obviously the playbook, the core plays, the full access to Discord, the access to the coordinators in terms of asking them all the questions. You get the up to lock shows on a weekly basis, especially for MLB with Draft Sheet, which are fantastic. And look, if you haven't been a member yet, sign up. 15% off, code NFL15. Again, they get you 15% off for all monthly subs. And it's for the life of your subscription as well. And it includes SaberSim as well. So if you get SaberSim, it's still 15% off. And look, folks, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, be sure to do so. Again, we do the members never win piece consistently because it's a sarcastic way to say that we just consistently have members that find their ways at the top of leaderboards. And I think it's just a collective effort. You have a lot of very sharp minds for every sport on this team. And obviously NASCAR is no different. Coop and Keg just continue to crush on a weekly basis. And kudos to them. I learned so much from them on a weekly basis, obviously doing the show and talking through scenarios. It's just been fantastic. And it's nice to see MMA podcast do, which I know Keg, big due to yours as well. It's nice to see him kind of getting in the NASCAR mojo.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like it, man. I'm trying to learn. I'm getting in these DFS streets. Obviously, we do well on the betting, but I'm trying to learn from you and Coop and Gav on the DFS streets. But man, it's just a completely different animal.
Definitely completely
different. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, definitely a completely different.
I was going to say one thing to keep in mind is like I don't like playing Byron together with Bowman because I can see one of them getting to where they need to be, but not both of them. Like that's the same way with like Austin Dillon and Chase Briscoe. Like they're kind of fighting against each other to get to where they need to be. And for both of them to get there, it's going to be more difficult than obviously one of them. And like same way with like Ty Dillon and Noah Gragson. Like I don't know if I would play them together. Now, like, do I have a problem playing Chase Briscoe and Noah Gragson together? No, but it's still very risky. But like when they're close to each other, like starting position wise, it's hard for both of them to get there.
That's a good point. It's a very good point. Okay, so I guess any well, let's do this real quick before we end the show. Fades, Coop, who are some guys going to be very low weight on today?
So obviously I mentioned Chastain. The drivers starting 7th to 11th are the ones that scare me the most. I just sat here and we just talked a lot about, the drivers who start in the top 20 stay in the top 20. And, you can't play everybody, but I don't have an issue if anybody wants to take shots at Cole Custer, Brad Keselowski, Eric Jones, drivers like that, because their only chance to get into the playoffs is to win, and they're going to do some strategy plays today, and whether they work out or not, we don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me if one of those drivers, or even two of them, still 50 laps, each, 100 laps total, or if one driver still is 100 laps total. So they're the ones that scare me the most from a fade perspective. Another driver, again, just talked about this. Todd Gilliland starts 16th. Like, there's a lot of good cars behind him that I think are going to pass him in the first stage, and that's why I don't want to take my shots on a Todd Gilliland or a Noah Gragson or Todd Dillon. I might be more willing to. Same with Ricky Stenhouse. Ricky Stenhouse isn't good on these flat tracks. So I'm going to stay away from him. I'm staying away from Corey LaJoie because he sucks on flat tracks too. And then any of those back markers, JJ Yeley, I hope you're listening, Gavin. I don't have any interest in playing that guy whatsoever. These guys all finished at the bottom of the list when it comes to the Richmond spring race. They have no speed, and they're going to finish there once again.
Yeah, and overall, we sit at 140 likes, yet 240 people watching. Because we are 10 short, we will once again have to concede defeat, and no one will get any free anything. Not my three guys I'll be way overweight on, not Jay's entire betting slate. But needless to say, folks, we thank you so much for watching. As always nice to have an active chat as well. Try to get to a lot of the questions, but obviously we can't get to them all, but that's what the Discord's for, right? For members to fire away questions in there, and happy to get to anything. And Coop on your end, I'm sure as well. And nobody in the entire DFS team in general loves being asked for help more than Coop does in the Discord. So just make sure you just keep firing messages his way. It doesn't have to be NASCAR questions. It could be personal questions. He'll answer them all. So just slide in his DMs and he's happy to answer them. He's like a machine that way, actually. But no, another good show. Obviously, appreciate you, Keg. Appreciate you, Coop. I think a lot of good content overall. Guys, as always, gamble responsibly, stay safe, and look, run pure. Hope you all win all your slates today, all your bets, whatever it may be. Plus, of course, it's against me directly, then maybe not. JK, obviously, it's nice to have us all win together as a community, which we all love. And we love seeing those RPS logos all over the leaderboard. So keep up the good work all around, guys. And look, enjoy your Sunday. Other than that, Simon, let's get out of here.